Uncensored. Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to COASTER-net Uncut. We've been away doing the Thrilling 32 for the last few weeks, but we are back with a brand new topic that I think you're really going to love. But before we get into it, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to all those people that participated in the Thrilling 32, whether you submitted a ballot, submitted a bracket, whether you watched the show or commented somewhere. Thank you so very much for supporting the Thrilling 32. The response was definitely overwhelming, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Danny, I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had so much fun doing that, taking in the ballots for a couple of months there and then organizing the bracket and doing the big bracket challenge. This was by far the most successful year for both the roller coaster poll and the bracket challenge, the Thrilling 32 bracket challenge. So Andy and I both want to thank you, and the entire COASTER-net crew. We'd like to thank everyone. We got a lot of new people coming to the site, so hopefully that means next year it's even bigger and better, because I think some people found us after voting was over, but during the actual bracket contest. So hopefully that means we get more voters next year. So it's over until next year, and we're excited to get to a brand new topic that is something that, Andy, you and I have been talking about for a little while. And, last night we just posted up our question, and just in 24 hours, we've gotten loads of responses for our topic tonight. And you're going to have to excuse me. We're recording on a Thursday night here, and it's actually the Thursday night of the Frozen Four. For you non-sports fans, it's the Final Four of NCAA college hockey. So I've got a hockey game over here, and I've got a baseball game up on my second monitor. So you might see my eyes wandering from time to time to check the scores. But we're excited to talk about this topic tonight. What are we talking about tonight, Andy?
Well, tonight we are talking about roller coasters. Oh, shocker! But we have a very good question. We have a very good question for the audience, for ourselves, and for our Uncut listeners. And that question was, what is the best state for roller coasters? Not theme parks, not amusement parks, not, themed rides, not anything else, not flat rides, not water parks, but roller coasters. What is the best state for roller coasters? So I think tonight, since we've had such an overwhelming response to this question, let's send it off to what the listener said first, and then we'll come in and give you our thoughts after that.
Yeah, we'll jump in. We got a lot of participation, Facebook, Twitter, the COASTER-net forums. So we're actually going to start I'm going to start in the Coaster Consortium. And again, like you said, we're not talking about theme parks as a whole. We're talking just the roller coasters, which is where I think if you were to say theme parks in general, I think it almost easily becomes Florida. I think that's the answer that everyone defaults to, depending on, just because of, you have so much down there. But when you're talking about just roller coasters, then it becomes a much tougher decision in my point of view. So starting off here, we'll actually go to the Coaster Consortium on Facebook first. And we had some people who just said what they thought the state was and left it at that, and others who actually felt the need to explain their answer a little bit more. So which state has the best roller coaster lineup? Jake Hammonds, he's from Ohio. He said Ohio, and Ohio is one of those states that I think a lot of people think of first off. You got Cedar Point and Kings Island. Those are the two big ones. You used to have Geauga Lake, so right now it's pretty much Kings Island and Cedar Point. What else? You have Stricker's Grove there. Is there anything else really notable in Ohio? I think it's just really those couple there. But, I mean, Cedar Point and Kings Island, two of the better coaster parks in the country. So you have that. Our buddy Brian Bass said he would go with either Ohio, Pennsylvania, or Florida. And those were, like I said, we talked about Ohio, but Florida and Pennsylvania are two states that got a lot of mention. Sam Natcher, who actually has been doing some stuff for us at COASTER-net recently, he actually went into a bit more detail, and he says he's not sure that there is one correct answer. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for wooden coasters, then definitely you want to go towards Pennsylvania. And I think that's true. I mean, Pennsylvania has a lot of your older style parks. You have Kennywood, you have Knoebels, you have Idlewild, you have the oldest roller coaster in the world in Lakemont. You may or may not still have Conneaut, which has at least one classic wooden coaster, maybe not a whole lot else, but we're looking at just the coasters.
Yeah.
So, you can say Conneaut. Waldameer has Ravine Flyer, and then you have Thunderhawk at Dorney Park, and Hershey has a good wooden coaster lineup, so that's true. Now, he's from Ohio, and then he also said Ohio's in the argument, too, with Cedar Point and Kings Island. And for themed rides, like we talked about, Florida wins hands down. And he said if he had to pick one, he would actually pick Pennsylvania, despite his Ohio bias. He thinks that between the wooden coasters and the steel coasters, they are the most well-rounded. So what do you think about Pennsylvania being the most well-rounded? Now, I'm from Pennsylvania, so maybe I'm a little biased towards Pennsylvania, but this is an Ohio guy saying he would pick Pennsylvania for its well-rounded lineup.
I'll be honest with you. I did the Pennsylvania run last year, and I was not overly impressed by Pennsylvania. Hershey Park with Sky Rush was amazing, but the rest of their lineup, there's a lot there, but not a lot of notable stuff there. Wasn't a huge fan of really anything else. Lightning Racer, pretty good. A lot of, like we talk about, different tiers of roller coasters, a lot of good stuff at Hershey. But at Kennywood, I think Phantom's Revenge is an outstanding coaster. But once again, the rest of the lineup, not really all that exciting. Dorney. Dorney has a lot of interesting stuff. Steel Force being the standout. But really nothing that really enters into that top tier of roller coasters for me at Dorney. Waldameer, I was not a huge Ravine Flyer fan. Couldn't stand my trip to Conneaut, but that doesn't count because I didn't actually get to ride Blue Streak. Knoebels, really just looking at Knoebels coasters, I think Phoenix is the standout there. But yeah, I would agree that Pennsylvania has a lot, and it has a lot of different stuff. But I would say that Cedar Point by itself has better roller coasters than the entire state of Pennsylvania combined. There's a statement for you.
Better roller coasters, maybe. I think if you took like 3 Pennsylvania parks and kind of got a total number, like if you took the coasters from Hershey and Dorney, that would give you about the same number that Cedar Point has, a couple more. But if you were to take like Hershey and Dorney Park, and so that's what, there's, if you include the kiddie coasters and laugh track, that's like 13, and then 7, so you have like 20. So roughly, I think Cedar Point maybe still wins that discussion.
Yeah, it does.
And a lot of the ones at Hershey and but then you have so many different options in Pennsylvania that maybe that's where it comes into play. I don't know. You're shaking your head now.
And then you throw in Kings Island. And Kings Island with Banshee and Diamondback, and, I'm not a fan of the Beast, but people love the Beast. You throw that into the mix, and I think it knocks Pennsylvania out of the water. There's a lot of coasters, but this is not a number debate either, because if it was a number debate, we could just go up and add up all the coasters in the state, and whoever has the most wins. So we're not talking about that either. We're talking about quality of coasters. We are talking about number of coasters, but it has that quality too, and I just think Ohio overturns Pennsauva. A lot of people went to Pennsylvania on this one, but another and maybe it's our East Coast bias here, but let's go flip backwards a little bit to the other side of the state, of the other side of the country, and let's look at California. And California,
we're talking about numbers. I mean, California has the most.
And on the COASTER.net forums, we had Mr. Buckeye, who's new to our forums and also working with us a little bit here and there. He throws out there Magic Mountain has 18 different coasters of all different shapes and sizes. You have the classic Woodies at Knott's with Ghost Rider. If you go up north in the state, you have Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. You have Six Flags, California's Great America. And then you have all the seaside parks too, like Belmont. And then you even have your Disney's and your Universal too that people forget about in California. Yep. They have classic coasters there too. California, they might not have the Sky Rush or the Millennium Force or the Maverick, but they got a pretty nice collection. And now when you talk about numbers, overwhelming quality, I think California is the place for that. I think that answer is a lot easier, and especially if Twisted Colossus comes out, if that's a standout coaster, if that's really a top 10 coaster, now you're talking about California being a powerhouse of a state. You look at Magic Mountain already with X2, which is an amazing coaster, my top 10. You have Knott's with Ghost Rider. I love that Woody. You have a pretty good lineup in the category right after that with Riddler's Revenge and Accelerator and Apocalypse.
You got Tatsu in there.
And Tatsu. And that's just talking about the southern part of the state. You hit up the northern part of the state last year. You love Gold Striker. Gold Striker's in your top tier of Woodies.
Great America tonight.
There you go. Plus Flight Deck at Great America is a great invert coaster. You look at Discovery Kingdom, not a ton there.
A shorter Raptor.
Ooh, not a ton at Discovery Kingdom, but there's enough there to add into that overwhelming discussion. So I don't know. California's got that is something for me right there. I think California might be the answer because I think even California overtakes Ohio in just sheer numbers with quality when you throw that into it. Some other people, Water Parker on the forums also split it between Ohio and Florida. Specifically he points out in Florida, Hulk, Dragon Challenge, Montu, Kraken, Cheetah Hunt, Manta, all of those are pretty good coasters.
That's a solid bunch right there.
It's a solid bunch.
That's a solid bunch of coasters.
But I don't know if it's enough to enter into my discussion. Because really, once you get past that bunch, that is your bunch. And then you have like Expedition Everest, Revenge of the Mummy, and then it pretty much falls off the face of the earth.
Yeah, the thing with Florida really is, until White Lightning opened, they really didn't have a good. I mean, you had the Dana Beach Hurricane, but that's closed down, and people like that one, but people weren't fans of Gwazi. Legoland has a small wooden coaster, but they really didn't have a notable wood coaster that a lot of people knew about until they built White Lightning just a year or two ago. We lost Gwazi here this past year. Yeah. So, you got to take that into consideration. And the big thing that I think Florida does not have that all of these other states that we're going to talk about do have, you have a legitimate top 10 hypercoaster. And Florida, if there's one thing Florida's missing, that's what it is. And Disney and Universal aren't going that route. You don't think.
It seems that there's no desire there whatsoever.
Really a need. No, there's not. You're right. There's not. I mean, you would think that it would be a Busch Gardens maybe, but Busch Gardens, I mean, they have SheiKra, which qualifies as a 200-foot coaster, but it's not really meant to be not meant to be an airtime coaster. And they don't. I mean, Cheetah Hunt's probably the closest thing they have to an airtime coaster. And even that's not really what it's about. It's about speed and staying low to the ground. So it seems like Florida has a really good mix, and they do a good job of theming their roller coasters as much as you can. and like a Revenge of the Mummy is a nice themed roller coaster. Dragon Challenge and Hulk, about as good as you can do with a big B&M ride. Same thing with like a Montu and a Kraken and a Manta. As good as you can theme a roller coaster that large that's not in a building, I think they do it, but it feels like just there's one or two things missing in Florida. And in California, I think the complaint would have been a wood coaster, or at least a newer standout wooden coaster, but now they have Gold Striker.
Yeah.
I mean, Ghost Rider was your other option, or some of the older ones.
And here's my problem with Florida. Whereas I think Pennsylvania has the quantity and maybe not so much the quality behind it, I think Florida has the quality but not the quantity behind it.
Not quite the quantity.
There's not enough there to round out everything, where I'm not discounting your boomerangs and your kiddie coasters and your average, older style roller coaster that might be like a mine train or, an aero looper. If Florida just doesn't have that angle on it either. It's just, you have your top of the line coasters. There's about 10 of them, and that's it. And that's why I think Florida really falls out of my discussion pretty quickly. I can accept people who say Pennsylvania for coasters, but when people say Florida, I almost discount it immediately because, there's a few nice ones there, but let's be honest, there's a few nice ones in every state too. You look at a place like Massachusetts, and you look at, they have, you have Six Flags New England, which I'm repping tonight. Six Flags New England.
There you go.
There you go. So I got my Six Flags New England shirt. But you also have Kenobi, Lake Park there. Lake Compounce,
that's in New Hampshire, though.
Is it in New Hampshire? I don't know my states up there and where things are.
Canopy is right over the border. It might as well be in Massachusetts, but it's technically in Salem, New Hampshire. The exit is actually in Massachusetts, but you cross over the line on like the little side road that gets you there. Because I've been there.
And what about Lake Compounce and Quasi? Is that Connecticut? Or is it Massachusetts?
Yeah, those are Connecticut. Those are Connecticut. So you can't even throw that in there. I mean, Massachusetts it's just Six Flags New England.
Yeah, throw that out. That's nonsense. But then you, how about not looking at states, but if you look at Canada or something like that. You have Martin's Fantasy Island, you have Marineland.
See, Martin's Fantasy Island is on the U.S. side in Niagara Falls. So that's actually technically New York.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing. You and I were talking beforehand, and I think there's 7 states that you and I really were going to bring up tonight, and there's 2 in particular that are listeners haven't brought up that you and I are going to bring up a little later. But the one that we didn't really bring up at all was New York, and New York doesn't have the ones that you typically think of, but you have Martin's Fantasy Island, which has a good wooden coaster. Darien Lake is so-so.
Yeah.
You have Sea Breeze right here in Rochester, up the road from me. Then you have the Great Escape, which has a good wooden coaster in the Comet. And then New York, you're talking about Coney Island. Yeah. You're talking about Rye Playland. So New York, when you think about it, New York isn't a bad coaster state. It's just they're lesser known. It's kind of like Pennsylvania in a way, where they're smaller and more spread out. But when you put the whole, the sum of the parts may not be equal to, the whole piece may not be equal to the sum of the parts. Kind of like Pennsylvania, typically you would automatically default to a California or Ohio or Florida. But when you think about the sum of the parts in Pennsylvania, it's kind of the same way with New York. I still think Pennsylvania is better than New York, though.
Yeah, I
think Pennsylvania would even beat out Florida for me.
Yes, I would agree with both of those because New York has a lot, but they don't have the standout where they don't have a Sky Rush. They don't have a Phantom's Revenge, something like that, something that really, even a Ravine Flyer that people love. They don't have that yet. And maybe in the future, who knows? But just to send it back to another comment, Steel Rock from the COASTER.net forums.
This is good here.
So he picked California, but he made the comment of maybe the best state for coasters isn't the state because it has the most coasters, but because it's centralized.
It's because it's near everything.
And he says if you live in West Virginia, if you were to move to the city of Charleston in West Virginia, there are about 200 roller coasters within 500 miles of Charleston. Which I just think is amazing because it's absolutely true that if you want to be in the center of everything, West Virginia
really
is the place to be. And there are tons and tons of roller coasters around West Virginia. So maybe that's the answer.
Here's the thing. West Virginia, you're bordering Pennsylvania, so you're near the western Pennsylvania stuff, and then you're only maybe 5 or 6 hours from the eastern Pennsylvania stuff, okay?
Uh-huh.
And when you get close to eastern Pennsylvania, you're kind of close to Six Flags Great Adventure, which is New Jersey, so we can't really count that. But then to the west, you're right there next to Ohio, okay?
Uh-huh.
And with Kentucky Kingdom reopening, you're not far from that. Okay. To the south, you have Dollywood, which isn't far away at all. And to the east is one of the states that I don't think anyone really, or Steel Rock did mention some of the other states that you and I were going to bring up, but you have two really good parks in Virginia, in Busch Gardens and Kings Dominion. Now, I think for sheer numbers, I think Ohio still beats out of Virginia since you're really talking about two parks against two parks. But Virginia is not a bad coaster state. You have 6 really good roller coasters at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and then you have a group of 13 or 14 at Kings Dominion, 4 or 5 of which are pretty darn good. So I think it's the same thing with Cedar Point and Kings Island. Cedar Point obviously has the bigger numbers and the quality. Kings Island and Kings Dominion are very similar. So it's really Cedar Point in terms of coasters edges out Busch Gardens. But from a coaster perspective, but I think Virginia is at least worthy of a mention.
Now, another one that almost no one mentioned, I know Steel Rock mentioned Virginia and this one, but the one I'm going to throw into the mix tonight is Missouri. And people don't realize it because they're like, what's in Missouri? Well, my friends, Six Flags St. Louis. Six Flags St. Louis is in Missouri. Worlds of Fun is in Missouri, and what I think is probably the standout, even though it has the least amount of coasters, Silver Dollar City. So you have your really outstanding rides in Outlaw Run, which is a world-class coaster. I think Worlds of Fun has another world-class wood coaster, which is in my top 5, Prowler. I love Prowler. Think it's an amazing ride. And then you start throwing in all the other rides out there like Wildfire and Mamba and Patriot, that I love Patriot. And then you look at Six Flags St. Louis that has a great collection of coasters. Nothing that really stands out. You have a Batman clone. You have the Mr. Freeze clone. You have a Boomerang, a Mine Train. But it adds in to round out that group there a little bit. And I think Missouri, I don't think it's going to beat Pennsylvania in my mind. No. But I think it's right next. I think it beats Florida. I think it beats Florida. It's really close in my mind. Does Missouri beat Florida? I think that's the question here.
Well, I almost want to call it a tie because Florida definitely has them on steel coasters, I think. I think there's on steel coasters, absolutely. But you've got Prowler, you've got American Thunder, you've got the Boss, which enough people like. You've got Outlaw Run. I mean, that's enough for me to give the wood coaster edge to Missouri because Florida doesn't really have it.
Here's a question for you. Does Missouri's wood coasters beat Pennsylvania's wood coasters?
No.
No?
No. You look at Pennsylvania, Missouri. I just named 4 good wood coasters in Missouri: American Thunder, Prowler, Outlaw Run, and the Boss. And some people would question the Boss. Pennsylvania, you're looking at Phoenix. You're looking at Twister. You're looking at Ravine Flyer. You're looking at Lakemont, which has the oldest wood coaster in
Come
the league
on,
events. That's got to count for something. That's got to count for something.
Come on,
that's got to count for something.
It's a sideshow. It doesn't count for anything.
The same way that flying turns has to count for something because it's the only kind of, and it's in the world. Okay, Hershey Park, you've got the Comet and Lightning Racer, which are both good. You know, the jury's out on Wildcat.
Yeah,
they're just, and then I didn't even bring up Kennywood yet, and you've got 3 beloved classic wood coasters at Kennywood. I mean, personally, I think if you just took the wood coasters from the eastern part of Pennsylvania, that might be enough to beat out Missouri. Between Knoebels, Dorney, Hershey, and Hershey, I'm considering the eastern part of the state. I mean, I think there's a lot there. Throw in Kennywood, throw in Waldemere, throw in Idlewild, throw in Lakemont. I mean, they got 2 good wooden coasters at Lakemont. They got Skyliner too, which I thought was pretty good when I
Skyliner's a good ride.
Pennsylvania is the winner for wood coasters as far as I'm going, as far as I'm concerned. And that's because they have so many small parks.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to argue that point. Now, the other one that some people mention, and I know you were going to speak on behalf of all of Texas thrill seekers tonight and say Texas
thrill seekers, yeah.
Because we didn't even throw it out to them because we just assumed everyone would say Texas. So we just assumed everyone says Texas and Texas thrill seekers. But I think there's 3 good parks there. And if you add in things like the Galveston Pier, and what possibly could be a new
Boardwalk,
and Kemah Boardwalk, what possibly could be the new Grand Texas Park when that opens, Texas might be on the verge.
Getting switched back.
Yeah, like Texas might be on the verge of coming up right now. I think the 3 parks they have are pretty solid. You have a good mix of stuff at Over Texas. I think Fiesta Texas has the better rides, personally, with Superman and Iron Rattler, and Batman's going to be pretty unique right now. And then SeaWorld, I love Steel Eel. I think Great White's a good Batman clone. Journey to Atlantis, I don't even know if that is a roller coaster, to be honest with you.
There's barely a roller coaster.
There was quite the debate today on the G-Force Facebook page of whether or not the Journey to Atlantis are roller coasters. So
I think they are. Why not?
And the one at San Antonio was the one that a lot of people questioned whether or not that's a roller coaster. It's debatable.
It's a roller coaster.
Well, you count everything because you're a credit whore, but moving on.
I don't count the discos that you count. Who's the credit whore?
You count everything else you can, though. I don't know why you don't count the discos. Why don't you count the discos? You count every other thing as a roller coaster. Get the hell out of here. They're not roller coasters.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on.
Freaking Pipe Scream is more of a roller coaster,
but Journey to Atlantis isn't.
Freaking Pipe Scream is more of a roller coaster than Journey to Atlantis ever will be. Ever will be. That's more. Get the hell out of here. You gotta be shitting me right now to sit there and poo-poo.
We're getting into a different debate now.
Oh my God, you're gonna sit there and poo-poo it.
California's Great America, the Tiki Twirl. The Tiki Twirl used to be Survivor the Ride. It's a disco with the hill in the middle. I didn't count it. And I don't plan on it.
Well, you're one short. You're going to be one behind me when I go to California.
Well, hold on a second. I believe it was you who said, let's sidetrack here for a minute. Was it you that said the discos with the hill in the middle are coasters, the ones that are just the half pipe aren't?
Yes, I did say that. And
explain that one.
Well, it's my compromise that I make. It's the compromise. I'll give you that maybe.
Your compromise. Yeah. You're not sure if it is or not, so you only count half of them. Is that how it works?
I'm pretty sure. I'm nearly positive that Pipe Scream is a roller coaster.
I'm pretty sure.
No one has proven to me that it is powered throughout the entire ride. It valleyed last year. Too, that and to me, if a ride valleys, it kind of says that it's not powered throughout, because even with a wind, the power system should be able to take it over that hill. and put into high gear. So I'm of the belief that Pipe Scream is not powered throughout the whole ride, and I challenge anyone to prove to me that it is. You show me definitive proof, and I'll take it off my list. But no one has yet to show me definitive proof.
Okay, so how about this for a second? Over at Europa Park, the new Arthur ride that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a roller coaster?
Yes, that's a roller coaster. That is definitely a roller coaster.
That's interesting because people claim that's powered throughout the entire ride too.
Yeah, but it's bullshit. Like,
so that's interesting.
You can say whatever you want. It's like the same people that count the mine train at Alton Towers. That's powered throughout the whole ride too, and it's still on RCDB. You've dug me into this debate now.
That's the one at Canada's Wonderland is the same way. Thunder Ride.
Exactly. It's powered throughout, but yet people call it a roller coaster. Explain that to me. Is that one on your list?
Speed due to gravity.
Is it on your list?
Due to gravity.
Is it on your list?
Yes, that one's on my list.
It's powered throughout.
It's on RCDB.
You should add one for all the powered coasters then. There you go.
It's on RCDB. It's a roller coaster.
It's one man's opinion. It's on RCDB. I love RCDB, but let's be honest.
I'm just one man's opinion.
I'm just one man's opinion, too.
Yeah, well, you're the wrong opinion. So,
stop. Let's get.
Anyways,
let's get back to the real debate.
Let's get back. Mr. Chester here, he said that he was gonna say California because of how much they have, but he said that reading Steel Rock's post actually made him change his mind. So he went with Pennsylvania because said Hershey, Dorney, Dutch Wonderland, Knoebels, Waldemere, and Kennywood. And he said you could easily defect to Kings Island, Great Adventure, and Darien Lake. Too close to ignore, but if the borders are the rules, he's going to stick with California if we're strictly laying the borders at the state lines, which I think we are going to do. So he's going to go with California.
Yeah. So I don't know where to go. My gut tells me, in my mind, it's a debate between California and Ohio. To me, that I think Ohio gives you the quantity and the quality. I think California, the main debate on California is it doesn't have your signature super hyper or giga. I think it needs that one standout ride in California, and I don't think Goliath is that ride.
Goliath doesn't really count.
It's a hyper, right? It's just not. Is it 200 feet?
Yeah, the drop is 255. The height is 235. But the reason that one doesn't come to people's mind is that's not an airtime coaster like you typically think of as a hyper coaster. It's got the one airtime hill, then it's all positive helixes. So it's not your traditional hyper coaster that's built for airtime. It's built more like a giga coaster, really, for speed and for turns. And so it's really, really tough in that regard. It's the one thing that California has always been missing for me is an airtime coaster, and I think you get that in Gold Striker. You get that on Gold Striker, and I think you get that on Apocalypse too. But your best airtime coasters in California, I think, are the classic wooden coasters, like the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Giant Dipper is there. I haven't ridden the one at Belmont Park yet, but then you have Gold Striker and Apocalypse. Magic Mountain doesn't really have that coaster that's chock full of airtime. Now, maybe with Twisted Colossus, we're going to see that change, obviously.
Yeah.
But so maybe that suffices there.
Well, let's. Why don't you? Could you get a feel or a consensus for the other groups on Facebook, and what would you say?
So the Steel Coaster Connoisseur, I posed this question in the Coaster Consortium, which we already talked about, the Steel Coaster Connoisseur page and the Wood Coaster Connoisseur page. So I'll go to the Steel Coaster Connoisseur page here, which is where we had a lot of reaction. Nels Cleef, we've never had this person interact with us before, but they say Pennsylvania. You talk about how many Classic coasters you have at Kennywood, the Blue Streak at Conneaut, Knoebels, Lakemont with the world's oldest coaster. Dorney has a lot of. Dorney is one of those parks that doesn't really have a bad coaster. It may not have your top 5 coaster or top 10 coaster, but there's not really a bad coaster that beats the living hell out of you and that you say you never really want. The worst coaster there might be Stinger, and that's not bad. It's fairly smooth, aside from the mechanical issues, and then also Waldemere with Ravine Flyer. Taylor says Florida. Because of just, the quantity and the theming that goes along with some of them. And also Pennsylvania, Hershey Park is what our buddy Mike Troyce said. He said Hershey Park has to get a mention for Pennsylvania, obviously. Andrew K., who is one of my buddies up here at school as well, along with Mike Troyce and I. He also said Pennsylvania has a good stack, although California and Florida have a ton. Both of those states are significantly bigger and harder to traverse than PA, though. PA, a lot of stuff is close, whereas see, the thing with Florida is a big state, but it's all centrally located. You can get to almost everything in Florida within an hour or two of Orlando. So that's the tricky thing. Now, California, I agree. California, you got stuff top to bottom, and that's a long trip to do everything in California. He says Ohio with the 2-seater fair parks as well. He also mentions Texas, but he thinks Pennsylvania has the best ratio of world-class parks and rides per square mile than the other states. For how small Pennsylvania is, it's very dense in terms of – because when you think about it, compare Pennsylvania to the size of California or the size of Florida. And you think about it, Pennsylvania is a fairly small state.
Pennsylvania is not a small state. Like, Pennsylvania is not a small state at all. Pennsylvania is a huge state. Lengthwise.
It's a huge state. It's a huge state lengthwise, but there's nothing in the middle. It's all cows and hills in the middle.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that
it's
you
like
look
Nebraska.
You look at like Ohio. Ohio is like half the size of Pennsylvania. And I think if you're doing per square mile, per square mile, you got 2 great parks. You got 17 in one and 13 in the other. Come on.
Yeah,
and
but Pennsylvania has more than Ohio.
Well, I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about quality and numbers.
Well, that's part of the discussion.
Per square mile, it's better. Per square mile, Ohio is better. Get out of here, Pennsylvania. All these Pennsylvania people. Pennsylvania people think very highly of themselves, too, mind you.
Okay, so here, Jim Winslet, our buddy who lives up there in Canada now, and he's originally from Texas. He took issue with someone saying that Skyrocket at Kennywood might qualify as world class. I don't know that Skyrocket qualifies as doesn't qualify as a world class coaster. No. However, he said he said that's not to say I wouldn't agree that Pennsylvania has the best lineup, but there's no need to call Skyrocket a world class coaster, which I agree with. But he thinks that Pennsylvania might have the best lineup. You see, Pennsylvania's not doing a whole lot for you.
Once you get past, like, I think Dorney has good above average rides. You have Skyrocket. There's really not much else at Hershey Park that I go crazy over. I like Great Bear. I like Super Duper Looper. I like Lightning Racer. So there's more average rides there.
And Fahrenheit are okay.
They're average, above average stuff. Kennywood, the only thing there is Phantom's Revenge for me, and then Knoebels obviously has
come on,
Phoenix.
You like Thunderbolt and Jackrabbit?
No, I don't. They did nothing for me. No, yeah, that Thunderbolt, I didn't like at all.
Wooden coasters in general.
Well, yeah, that's part of the problem. And then,
well, that's why you don't like Pennsylvania, because it's all wood coasters.
Yeah, well, I think the answer for steel coasters, I think it's meh at best. You have your Skyrush, you have your Phantom's Revenge, Steel Force, and then after that, it's a lot of meh throughout the whole state for steel coasters. I would be willing to say that Pennsylvania is the best state for wooden coasters. I will concede that point, but I don't
think there's a question on that.
Yeah, well, I will not concede the point that it's the best state overall. I really think California's that answer. I would almost say California's that answer, even if you lop off the half of the state. If you just take the LA area, I think when you think of coasters in California Screamin' and Matterhorn bobsleds and Revenge of the Mummy is there as well, I think California gives you the best mix as well. That you talk about the theming of Florida. Well, the theming of Florida is out in California too. That people forget. California's, Disneyland and Universal Studios and all of that. You have the theming there.
But the Florida parks have way more, the Disney and Universals in Florida have way more coasters than the California ones. All Universal Hollywood has is a poor man's version of the Mummy, a not as good Mummy, and then at Disney you got California Screamin'. No, it's not. It's statistically different. The California one does not go backwards, and it doesn't have the spoiler alert. The California one doesn't have the fake unload, I don't think either, because that's where it goes backwards. And they don't have a Hulk. They don't have dueling dragons. They don't have a Rip Ride rocket, which, okay.
Yeah, but Magic Mountain has all that stuff. Magic Mountain and Knott's has all that stuff. That's my point. That if you like the theming of Florida, you have the theming of Florida, plus you have the better rides in California. And once Twisted Colossus opens, I think it almost becomes a non-point. I'm going to be loved by the California people. My vote's officially California.
You're officially gone to California.
Yes.
Well, and David Hayner said that for wood coasters, no question, Pennsylvania. If you're looking for everything, he's going with California, just because, they have more coasters than any other state. So that's fair. Let's see. Let me jump over to the wood coaster connoisseurs, which I
wonder what that's going to say.
Well, you would think that they're pretty much all going to say Pennsylvania, right? Is that what you're predicting here?
That would be my prediction. Yes. Otherwise, they're not much. They're not much connoisseurs if they don't say Pennsylvania.
Darren says Pennsylvania because of the history, number one, and it has a good collection of modern state-of-the-art rides. Phantom's Revenge, Storm Runner, Steel Force, Talon, and you've got the who's who of coaster designers all in the same state. You have Arrow, Morgan, B&M, Miller, PTC, Intamin, Schwarzkopf, Vekoma, Schmeck, Allen, Premier, Vettel, GCI, Maurer, Max, CCI, Reverchon, Molina, Gravity Group, Myler, Hershelf, Ajume, Chance, Zier, and the Oscar Bittler ride at Williams Grove, which is standing but not operating. From 1902, Leap the Dips to Impulse and Laugh Track in 2015, he doesn't think that you're a real coaster lover if you leave Pennsylvania disappointed with their line.
Well, then call me not a real coaster lover. Then label me as that. Jonathan Erdman, he says he lives in Ohio, and his first instinct is to say Ohio, but he thinks that Pennsylvania has Ohio beat. And Darren said the same thing. Darren, he said he's from Ohio, and he has been saying for years that PA has the better coaster collection. Chris Collins says the same thing. Pennsylvania comes to mind immediately, just for the variety of parks and the fact that they're well-rounded and you can get just about anything in Pennsylvania. Bill Galvin says Pennsylvania, no reason to explain, it's obvious. And Ken Zacherl concurs. Pennsylvania has some of the best coasters around, and he's a Pennsylvanian as well. And the last person who put in some feedback here was Richard Steele. He said, Ohio, if you're looking for the latest and greatest. Pennsylvania, if you're looking for a mix of the old with also a good batch of new thrills.
So I think that goes back to it. I think the clear-cut answer for wood coasters and classic coasters has to be Pennsylvania. There's just too many old parks. There's too many family-run small parks that are there. I mean, California, the wood coasters don't compare. Texas is getting rid of all their wood coasters. Missouri might be second for wood coasters, but there's just not enough there. They have 3 really good ones. Pennsylvania probably has half a dozen really good ones. Virginia, not known for their wood coasters. There's none at Busch Gardens, and the ones at Kings Dominion aren't well liked. Florida just got one of their first, signature wood coasters. New York, the Coney Island Cyclone, Martin's Fantasy Island. You have a few there, the Great Escape Comet. New York might be the second or third best state for wooden coasters, just because there's more small parks. I mean, you have Martin's Fantasy Island with Silver Comet. You have the Comet at Great Escape. You have the Coney Island Cyclone. You have the Dragon Coaster at Rye Playland. You have Predator at Darien Lake, which most people don't like. I really like Predator. But, I mean, they're kind of like Pennsylvania, a poor man's Pennsylvania in terms of wooden coasters, where they have some of the classics. They don't have a lot of the newer ones, though, like you see with a Lightning Racer or Ravine Flyer, or even like a Wildcat or Hershey Park or a Twister, or Flying Turns. Only found in Pennsylvania. And I think there's bonus points to be had for having the world's oldest coaster.
Holy hell.
That's not to say Pennsylvania is my final pick, but I think for wood coasters, there's no question.
I'm going to throw this out there, too. You take Sky Rush out of Pennsylvania, and you say that Sky Rush was never built, I think Pennsylvania becomes a clear third behind Ohio and California. Absolutely. Sky Rush is the only thing, because now you're talking about no signature steel coaster in the entire state. Sky Rush is, come on, Steel Force and Phantom's Revenge. They're good coasters. They're not signature top-of-the-line coasters. Neither of them made your Thrilling 32. Come on, how can they be signature coasters?
Phantom's Revenge made the Thrilling 32?
Oh, it did. But it got knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, by a Canadian coaster that we're not even talking about.
Yeah. No, but I take Sky Rush out of the mix, and Pennsylvania has even less of an attraction.
You can't take Sky Rush out, though.
I'm just saying,
you can't do that. It's there.
I'm just saying. I don't know.
Sky Rush is better than any ride. Sky Rush is better than any steel coaster in the state of California, I think.
True. That's what I'm saying. You take Sky Rush out of the mix, and I can't even talk about Pennsylvania anymore. Yeah.
See, I think you're delusional when you say that.
No.
In Pennsylvania, you have Phantom's Revenge, you have Steel Force, you have Talon, you have Sky Rush, you have Storm Runner, which I think is a pretty good coaster. You've got Fahrenheit, which is a decent coaster. You've got Great Bear, which I think is a pretty good coaster. I mean, that group right there, that's 7 that are pretty darn good.
But Kings Island by itself kind of knocks all those out. That, Kings Island, you got Fire...
it doesn't.
Oh, come on. Diamondback and Banshee and Firehawk.
Those are 3 good coasters.
Yeah, and Diamondback and Banshee, outside of Sky Rush, Diamondback and Banshee, it would go Sky Rush, Diamondback, Banshee, 1, 2, 3 down the list. So nothing else in Pennsylvania even compares. And I didn't even talk about Cedar Point, because Cedar Point by itself takes out all those steel coasters. By itself.
Well, okay, all right, take out Maverick and Sky Rush, okay?
You still have Millennium Force, Gatekeeper, Raptor, Dragster. These are top-of-the-line coasters. That set right there just takes out every steel coaster that Pennsylvania has. Those ones that I just named.
Ohio wins the steel debate, sure, but you can't split it up. You can't just go off of steel. Ohio has the beast for wood coasters. That's it.
And
Blue
Streak,
and people forget about Blue Streak.
They shouldn't. Don't forget about Blue Streak.
I know they shouldn't, but Blue Streak is not better than Phoenix. Blue Streak is not better than Ravine Flyer. I mean, it's not better than either of those. And some people argue it would be the third or fourth best wooden coaster at Kennywood. I think Twister at Knoebels is better than Blue Streak.
Get out of it. Well, Twister I might give you. Twister might be. I don't rank it that highly. But
Phoenix,
Blue Streak's
Twister,
better than anything
Ravine
Kennywood
Flyer,
has.
and Thunderbolt are right there for me, are definitely all better than Blue Streak. And Lightning Racer I might put on a level playing field.
Nah. Wood coasters. Blah. So what's your pick?
I know. I think Pennsylvania has Ohio beat. So for me, and I think California has Florida beat. And I think Virginia, Missouri, and Texas are good, but they fall a little bit short. And I think New York is probably the eighth after all I think the debate comes down between California and Pennsylvania. I think Ohio and Florida are the next two. And then I think Virginia, Missouri, and Texas are the next three. And New York is the eighth one. Okay. I think that's what. So I'm right now thinking of California versus Pennsylvania for my pick. That's what I'm trying to decide between. And you have people who are not from Pennsylvania, not from the East Coast, saying Pennsylvania. And when you think about it, if you live in Pennsylvania, you have the ability. Say you live where I do in Allentown, near Dorney Park. I have the ability to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, I want to go to a theme park. Where can I go? I have 6 options that I could get in the car and drive to on a whim. And if you're in the western part of the state, you can say the same thing. California, you could do the same thing.
If you're in the western part of the state, you're driving to Ohio. If you're in the western part of the state, you're driving to Ohio.
Not.
Yes, you are. Absolutely, you are. If you want to have a fun day at a theme park, you're driving to Ohio. If you're in western PA,
but it's at least 4 hours.
It's 4 hours well spent.
Is my point. I'm not disagreeing with you. But if you're in the East, if you live in Allentown where I do, you're 15 minutes from Dorney, you're an hour and 10 from Hershey, you're an hour and a half from Knoebels, you're a couple hours from the western part. 4 hours from where I am gets you to Kennywood, which is worth a day. That's what I'm saying. If you're in Pennsylvania, you can drive to anything. California is kind of the same way, but it's divided to north and south, whereas Pennsylvania is east and west. There's like a big 4 hour gap between everything in the state. Pennsylvania, it's divided into east and west, and you kind of have like Del Grosso's and Lakemont right in the middle, and Hershey Park's kind of on the edge of the eastern part. Hey, the Red Sox won. And in California, you've got everything in the north and everything in the south, but there's nothing in between. And there's a big 5 hour gap in the middle.
I think California, the same statement that you just made about Pennsylvania can be made for California too. And it's even less.
Sure, that's what I mean.
That if you're in LA, you're talking about 4 major parks right within striking distance of a day. Like you can hit up 4 parks in a day if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the other half of the state. You have 2 parks with a very good third kids park at the bottom. That you have Discovery Kingdom, Great America, and then Gilroy Gardens, which is a very nice park. And that's not even to mention all the seaside piers and all that, and all the boardwalks,
Santa Cruz, Santa Monica, Belmont,
and we forgot another one, SeaWorld San Diego. Is another park that we did not even mention and has 2 legit coasters there.
Not well known for their coasters, though. Well, hold it. You said 2 legitimate roller coasters?
Journey to Atlantis.
They have a Journey to Atlantis there. Are you counting their Journey to Atlantis?
Yes, it's completely different. It's more coaster than water ride. Come on, man.
Oh, boy. I got you there. I got you.
Come on, that's more of a.
I got you.
Get out of here. If I could throw something at you right now, I would. Freaking unbelievable. So make your pick, man. Like you keep sitting the fence here. I'm going with California. That's my clear pick.
You're going California?
Yeah.
Should I be a homer?
All right, you are. You are a homer.
I am.
You know your pick is Pennsylvania.
I think. See, to be completely honest with you, this entire discussion, I entered the discussion saying that California was going to be my pick, but thinking about it now, because I'm such a big wood coaster guy, I think I would pick Pennsylvania because I love the wood coasters so much. I like wood coasters a little bit better than steel, and the fact that California, I love Gold Striker. And I really like the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk Giant Dipper. I thought that those were, I think those are probably the two best wood coasters in that state. I think Giant Dipper is even a little better than Apocalypse if you get it on a good day and you ride it in the back seat. For me, being a wooden coaster fan, I think you look at Phoenix, you look at Twister, you look at Flying Turns, Thunderhawk's not bad. You look at all the things at Kennywood, you look at Lightning Racer and Comet, and Wildcat has been improved with the retracking and the Millennium Flyers. You have Ravine Flyer, Leap the Dips. It's kind of like the corkscrew that used to be at Knott's that's now at Silverwood. It's nothing compared to the modern day coasters, but being the oldest or a first or some sort of record breaker, being the first coaster to go upside down, in this case being the oldest roller coaster in the world, has to have some sort of value. So for me, because I'm a wood coaster guy, a little bit more than a steel coaster guy, and not wanting to completely sacrifice steel coasters, knowing that we have Skyrush, we have Steel Force, we have Phantom's Revenge, we have Talon, you have Hydro, which isn't horrible. You have Great Bear. We have Fahrenheit and Stormrunner. I think I'm going to have Pennsylvania as my number one with California as 1A.
No, yeah.
If I was a steel coaster guy like you, I'm going California all the way. I agree.
Yeah.
But I think I don't want to give up all my wood coasters, and if I pick California, I'm giving up almost all my good wood coasters. I get Gold Striker, and that's it.
To be honest, the only wood coaster in Pennsylvania I really, really think is a step above is Phoenix. I think the rest of them are
you're
good
weird.
to average. I'm really not, but
no, I think you're weird.
So I think that wraps up our debate tonight, which I think was very lively, to say the least.
I don't think we're even going to be able to decide on a collective one.
No, it's not going to happen. We're going to leave it at you like Pennsylvania, I like California. I would give my 1A to Ohio, to be honest with you.
I would give my 1A goes to California, and I think my third one is probably either Ohio or Florida. I'm with you there. I think Ohio and Florida are the next
Before we leave, though, I want to throw this out there, because the place I'm going to mention is about the size of a state. I'm going to say England.
I have an idea of where you're
England.
Going. Just England.
Just England. Just England. Think about Thorpe and Alton and Blackpool, and man, that's a collection there. You want to talk about a collection of rides, old, new, top of the line, middle of the line. You got everything in England.
Well, and here's two more for you that I thought of. Now, they're not on the same level. I think they're clearly after the top 8 that we've already talked about a little bit. But Minnesota with Mall of America and Valley Fair is at least worth a mention. I mean, that's not the quantity. Wisconsin has some small stuff. You got Bay Beach. You've got Little America. You have Mount Olympus. You have Timber Falls. So they've got at least a little bit to mention there. I would say that maybe – trying to think if there's any. I mean, Georgia has Six Flags Over Georgia and Wild Adventures.
No, that's not enough.
Is Georgia? No. I might put Georgia ahead of New York.
No, I don't know.
No?
I wouldn't say that.
I don't know. That's tough. And we joked about. I was saying, well, what about North Carolina? I was like, oh wait, but half of their coasters are in South Carolina.
That's true. Well,
I don't know. I think this has been a good discussion. What do you think?
Yeah.
This has been lively and heated, I think, at times, but it's good. We got lots of interaction, so it was good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there just because we're not going to come to consensus here. So I think we'll leave it at that. So. And maybe we'll open it up at another time to discuss like basic region, because maybe that's more of a discussion too. Maybe not just state borders, but maybe we talk about region.
Well, maybe we can come to a consensus here. If you don't like wooden coasters, California, absolutely. I think we're both in agreement there. But would you at least agree that if you are a bigger wood coaster fan than a steel coaster fan, that Pennsylvania is probably you're gonna sway towards Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I think you could sway that way. I still think California, even though it doesn't have the number of wood coasters, I still think California has a very good collection with the stuff you see at the big parks.
It's not bad.
Like, you got the big park stuff, you got the boardwalk stuff. Like, there's some decent stuff in California too. But I'll concede the point that Pennsylvania probably has the better wood coaster collection.
Yeah, if you concede that, I'm willing to concede that if you're a steel coaster person like yourself, more than a wood coaster person, California, absolutely. I won't argue that at all.
And I'll still say that in my book it goes California, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Like, in my book it still goes that way, because I'm a steel coaster guy.
And if you're a steel coaster person and don't like the wood coasters a whole lot, I would probably agree with you there. I think Ohio has Pennsylvania beat slightly on the steel coasters, but I think the wood coasters, I think Pennsylvania blows everything else out of the water, and I don't think it's a contest. So that's why I would go with Pennsylvania, but that's evident of our varying interests. So I think we'll come to that sort of consensus anyways, and maybe we'll have people weigh in on the comments, whatnot, and after the show drops, they'll get a chance to weigh in on what our thoughts were. I was surprised at how many people liked Pennsylvania and that more people didn't go to California or even Florida. I was really surprised we didn't have a lot of people say in Florida, but I think they understood that this was a coaster discussion, not a park discussion.
Yeah. Well, as always, thank you very much for joining us here tonight on COASTER-net Uncut. Thank you for participating. Please comment on the video and join us on the forums or in these Facebook groups, and you too can have your opinion made as well. That wraps it up for us here tonight. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Rochester, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
See you next week.